beginning this particular lesson, I painted in my first major primary shapes and secondary shapes, as you see. And then I'm laying my calligraphy, which I call pattern, on top of these shapes in little brush strokes that almost represent little triangles, which could be interpreted as pine trees. And so what I'm doing here is laying a pattern of these marks over this secondary shape. And the shape itself depends upon how dark that value is that you'll be able to see these. In this particular case, so you can see them very easily. And I keep repeating my strokes in the same motion. And as I go across, I get just a little bit lighter in the value of the marks, and I just keep putting them closer together. And as you paint them closer together, it appears to be darker, and then as they spread out with the secondary shape showing through, it comes lighter. Now, as I come down, I'm modeling the cliff that's in the photo, and with a few strokes around it. Remember, you're not going to outline those cliffs because that would look like a drawing. So you got to be very careful that you stop right at the edge of the cliff, and each one will define that edge, even though they're not connected with a line. Now, as I look at the photo, I think I'm going to put in my darker shapes. These are now I can look at that rock, the shape that I put in, which became way too dark. I think I should have had it lighter. And that's a primary shape. And then inside that shape, I'm going to put the secondary shape and a few lines that show the crevices of the rock and where the light is coming on the right hand side. Now, if that rock was painted a little bit lighter, which I wish it was, then I would have it show up just a little bit more. This is why we do value sketches like this, is because these are the things that you start to remember when you start to do the real painting. And so here's where you can make your experiments and you can try different values. You know, these rocks are way too dark and you can't hardly see the second value that's laid on top. Now this is the stroke that I'm going to lay on the ground or the wet sand, and I showed you up there because it's a horizontal and it's basically a wider than just a line, although it looks like a line right here. And I also the value is not going to be real dark, just darker than the sand value below. Uh, you're seeing this when it's still wet, and you do understand that once it dries, it does dry lighter. So you got to paint it just a little darker than you think. And so I'm designing this with a separation between the two strokes and pushing down on my brush so the stroke gets a wider at times and then thinner at other times. And it just gives a nice little pattern that shows the water coming in and going out. Now you've got to think about aerial perspective. And aerial perspective means that the waves are closer together way up there. And as they come down, they get further apart and just a little bit bigger. And you can't ignore perspective. Now you see how big I'm making these down here and closer together way up there, further away from you. And all of these are horizontal, when I'm painting them, and they give a diagonal direction as I get further down towards us, towards the viewer. Now I'm thinking of putting something that's in between this white foam that's coming from the water, and I'm thinking of very carefully as I put my strokes down. I want to keep it just a little bit of outline of the white going around it. That's why I'm painting it a little bit slowly and a little bit darker. I can see that I need that particular area there to be taken out, lowered in value. So it brings it down to the line. And then I've got some shadows and crevices in the rocks. And I'm just going to put a few of those pattern lines or marks inside them. Of course, they're not real black. They're kind of a middle light value. If it gets too dark, then you can take a Kleenex and wipe it. Take it off immediately before it dries. Now this is all held together by that structure of the primary and secondary shapes that I laid in that you didn't see me do on this. And don't forget, that's the first step. Now I thought maybe a little bit of reflection of those dark rocks just underneath, and also over to the rock that's on the beach itself. But not much. They're only marks that indicate that. Uh, One artist says, indicate, don't duplicate. And I think that's a sound advice. We're not doing a realistic picture here. It is a design with pattern over shape. Now I'm going to mix up a value that's going to be the sky, and you're going to see a gigantic change here, taking all that white away, and just a light value. Put it down just a little darker than you think, because obviously it's going to dry lighter, but you still want that down. So now you can see where the lights are playing a very important role in this particular sketch. Now you know I could have put clouds up there, but with all the activity that one has in the foreground, clouds would just distract from the real thing. And now I'm looking at some darker blacks in the distant shape there. And so I'm going to try to get that a little darker right up at topper edge. But I'm still using separate marks. I could paint that whole thing very, very dark, just like nothing, but then I lose my texture that I have by doing it in small marks. This is a round brush and this dabbing. I'm using neutral tint. That's the paint because it's actually not blue, not purple, but actually black and gray. When it dries, some dark, some blacks, lamp black and so forth, have a bluish cast to them. A little bit more texture in the foreground here. And now this doesn't have to be real black. Just touch it here and there, and that's all you have to do, and be about the end of it. Well, thank you for watching. This will be the assignment for our class that's coming up.